Ridiculous.
Ridiculous, but I bet it was for a significant amount of money.
Still ridiculous.
Yeah, but fun. I'd watch it. Look, Jake Paul wants to test himself against actual, not just world champion, but one of the greatest of all time.
And it wasn't fixed. Jake Paul would not survive 45 seconds.
I don't know about that. I think it would take a few rounds.
Really?
But yeah. First of all, Jake is a lot bigger. Jake's a lot bigger.
But what way would they fight?
Well, about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my what I'm looking at right now.
Joe, Rogan was taken aback when he learned that Jake Paul had offered Francis Ngannou the opportunity to be his next opponent after his fight with Gervonta Davis was canceled. On his podcast, Rogan described the matchup as both shocking and borderline reckless for the YouTuber-turned-boxer. Ngannou, a UFC legend-turned-boxing powerhouse, is widely regarded as one of the most dangerous punchers in combat sports. Rogan questioned whether Jake truly grasped the magnitude of the challenge he was stepping into. Still, he admitted that if the fight were to happen, it would undoubtedly be an unforgettable spectacle.
Nikista calls Francis. This is Francis telling the story. Nikista calls Francis and says, hey, we need your help. We need an opponent for Jake. Tank is out. And Francis says, all right. And Francis says, well, how can I help you? Nikista says, well, we're looking at an opponent for Jake. Tank Davis is out. And Francis says, all right, but specifically, how can I help you? Nikista takes a third swing at the bat. He says, well, we need an opponent. We need a boxer. We need a partner. We need somebody to fight Jake. Tank is out. And Francis asks him again, okay, what?
Francis Ngannou revealed that Jake Paul's team reaching out about stepping in as a replacement for Gervonta Davis caught him by surprise. He explained that the offer came suddenly and didn't align with his current goals. While financial terms were reportedly discussed, Ngannou declined, saying the proposal didn't make sense under the circumstances. He questioned how replacing Davis with him was being presented as a logical option, stressing that this decision wasn't about money, it was about whether the fight made professional sense.
Jake to replace Gervonta, I'm like, who's Jake? I was so confused, I wasn't expecting that at all. And he said, yeah, Jake Paul, he's fighting. And I'm like, no, bro, come on, don't disrespect me like that. And then, they even say they even come out after and say, and what if the number are good? He sent out some number. I'm like, it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my.
Former UFC champion Daniel Cormier gave Jake Paul a stern warning about the risks of taking on Francis Ngannou. He highlighted Ngannou's immense power and the huge gap in both experience and size, making it clear that Paul could be in serious trouble. Cormier stressed that this isn't just about money or showmanship. Facing a striking heavyweight with MMA experience comes with real danger, and the potential cost could far outweigh any reward.
From fighting Gervonta Davis to calling out Francis Ngannou, Jake Paul don't want those problems. I can't say it any different. Jake Paul does not want any Francis Ngannou problems. He don't. He does not want those issues. While I think it's crazy and I credit him for doing that, and I'm surprised he did that, this could be a ploy. Him poking out his chest, saying, I want Francis. He don't want those Francis Ngannou problems. I don't care what Anthony Joshua did to Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul gets in there with Francis. Francis will knock his head off this planet. You don't want those Francis problems. I watched Francis put down Tyson Fury. Sure, Anthony Joshua beat him. But even if Jake got power, I don't think he got power to be dealing with Francis.
Cormier called out Jake Paul's intentions, suggesting this fight is more about hype than real competition. He warned that Jake is likely underestimating the challenge of facing a heavyweight whose punches carry immense force. In MMA, Ngannou's power is feared, but in a boxing ring, it's even more concentrated. Cormier stressed that without understanding how MMA striking differs from boxing defense, Jake could be looking at a very short and dangerous night.
Boxing is much different than mixed martial arts. The target audience might be the same, but the demographics different. The places where people are brought up are different. There's bigger entourages in boxing. It's just a different world in boxing. We've known that from the very beginning. We know that Gervonta Davis was not going to just play to Jake Paul's rules. I still don't know exactly why this thing is falling apart, but it is falling apart bad. It is bursting at the seams. We are almost exactly where we should have never started. This should have never gotten started, but it did. But we are almost now exactly where we need to be.
Several analysts have criticized the idea of Jake Paul taking on Francis Ngannou on such short notice, calling it a high-risk move for both Paul and the storyline surrounding his career. With Gervonta Davis withdrawing late, Paul's team reportedly turned to Ngannou as a replacement, but Ngannou made it clear that joining the fight at the last minute doesn't align with his professional plans. Strategically, experts argue that Paul wouldn't have nearly enough time to prepare for someone of Ngannou's size, power, and heavyweight experience. Many commentators have also drawn parallels between this potential matchup and Ngannou's surprising performance against Tyson Fury. The comparison is based on crossover hype, unconventional matchmaking, and the spectacle factor rather than traditional boxing logic. Just as Fury, an established heavyweight champion, struggled far more than expected against the former MMA star, a Paul Ngannou fight would follow that same formula. An internet-famous boxer stepping up to face a physically overwhelming powerhouse. Even Fury admitted that his bout with Ngannou was one of the toughest challenges he'd had in years.
Okay, if they push it back to December, then that's slightly different. But this is the kind of one situation where you're kind of 10 days out, 2 weeks out from a fight, whenever they first got wind of this problem. This is the kind of situation where it would be possible that Jake Paul and Nikita Badarian and MVP, who are very, very shrewd people, this is the one occasion where they might end up making a mistake, taking someone at short notice who they shouldn't take. Because there'd be a whole raft of people putting their hand up for it, wouldn't they? Thinking, I'll take him at short notice. I'll make out that I've been sitting on a beach, eating and drinking for the last 6 months. I'll anything just to get in there with him. And then on the night, I'm gonna knock his head off. There'll be loads of people putting their hand up for this, and you'd have to be incredibly careful about who you took at short notice, because for it to have any kind of meaning, you would need to take a decent opponent at short notice, because obviously they're up against it because it's short notice. You couldn't take some barely warm body at short notice, because that would be even worse than giving them full notice. So this is the one area, the one situation in which it would be easy for them to make a mistake, but they don't make mistakes with things like this. They just don't. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they haven't been tempted into, somebody. Yeah, Ngannou, that'd be a mistake. It'd be such a mistake. I know he got flattened by Joshua, but so what? Joshua was a two-time unified champion of the world, and Ngannou's 270 pounds of absolute granite. That would have been a terrible, terrible mistake if they'd given him the fight.
And he dropped, people. I know, my opinion, Tyson Fury won that fight with Ngannou, but he still put Tyson Fury.
He was close.
Chael Sonnen recently shared his thoughts on a potential Jake Paul versus Francis Ngannou showdown, reacting with a mix of humor and genuine interest. He explained that from a competitive sports standpoint, the matchup isn't balanced at all. It's more like an experiment to see how much damage Paul can realistically take. Sonnen reminded fans that when Ngannou fought Tyson Fury, a natural heavyweight with years of boxing experience, it took only a single clean punch for Fury to hit the canvas. And if a world-class champion struggled with Ngannou's power, Sonnen questioned the idea that Paul could handle those same shots without facing serious danger.
Paul wouldn't make sense. But what in the hell do you think Tyson Fury got for boxing you? These aren't mean things from me. This is a reality. Tyson Fury knew there was a check. Name one person you'd rather see Jake Paul fight than Francis Ngannou. Is a real challenge. How Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren, Anderson Silva, Mike Tyson, how those aren't real challenges, I don't know. But this is the story as we're told. And do you see where that would satisfy so much? Do you see where that would force even the biggest hater to be quiet? And my job for something to make sense is the biggest check against the easiest opponent. I cannot think of anything I would rather see.
Jake Paul has built his reputation on flashy promotions and headline-grabbing matchups, but this time the buzz just isn't catching on. Unlike his earlier fights, where the opponents were at least somewhat comparable in size and experience, this proposed matchup feels directionless and uneven. Analysts suggest that Jake's formula of staying in the spotlight through odd or unexpected fight choices may finally be wearing thin. Many viewers now see this event as something created purely for attention rather than real sporting value. That perception is becoming obvious in the numbers, as ticket sales have remained disappointingly low despite weeks of marketing, interviews, and media push.
Still being in the competitive nature of the sport throws this one completely off for me. And the fact that Jake is like 60 pounds bigger than he is, right? Like, Mike was obviously far older than Jake, and that was the big knock on that fight. Mike should not have been in there with Jake. Said that many times. Jake has fought so hard against people saying he's bad for the sport, he doesn't actually want to fight or step up or do any of this stuff. And I've kind of had his back when I'm like, no, he is doing what most boxers have done early in their career. But this gives those people more ammo to be like, yeah, bro, look, this is what we're talking about. When we say he's bad for the sport, or when we say that he's doing stuff that doesn't make sense and he's making a mockery of things, this is what they're talking about. And again, I wouldn't have any problem with it if Tank was way past the point where he could fight competitively at his weight class and have fights with guys like Shakur Stevens, or even, again, rematching.
Chael Sonnen added that while Jake Paul's confidence and eagerness to challenge fighters far beyond his level can be entertaining, stepping in against someone like Francis Ngannou is a completely different reality. Sonnen stressed that Jake doesn't have the size, power, or durability that Tyson Fury brings to the ring. And if a heavyweight champion like Fury was rattled by a single clean shot, Sonnen argued it's nearly impossible to picture Jake surviving that same kind of impact.
You can't even grab a hold of the guy or try to squeeze him. You can only bludgeon and be bludgeoned back. I think you're got an uphill battle to question somebody. But they have been very effective in doing just that to Jake. Hey, you started with this NBA guy, and then even those MMA guys, they're not boxers. And then when you got around to the boxers, but they weren't current boxers. Then when you get around to the current boxers, they're not big enough boxers. And I just loved it. When I heard that Francis Ngannou might be going against Jake, I loved it. I mean, what's that going to look like? How many of those shots from Francis can you take? Tyson Fury, if you're talking clean, Tyson Fury only took one. Everything else, Tyson was able to roll with. Big Francis only had to hit him one time.
Tim Bradley pointed out that the collapse of the planned Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis bout created fallout far beyond just the fighters themselves. According to Bradley, promoters, broadcasters, venues, sponsors, and marketing partners all took financial hits once the fight was scrapped. The matchup was projected to generate strong pay-per-view numbers and significant sponsorship income, but the legal issues surrounding Davis pushed networks to step back and forced major brands to distance themselves to protect their reputation.
Wait, you gotta be the dumbest dude, in the history of boxing, bro. $40 million, dog, down the drain. You gotta be the dumbest dude I've ever seen in the history of boxing, bro. Seriously. I'm like, $40 million, bro. Wealth. Literally wealth, bro. Going down the drain. I don't understand it. I can't make the... I don't understand it. But I'll tell you this. MVP promotions, whatever the hell y'all call it, most valuable promotions, shit, more like rookie promotions. Yeah, more like rookie promotions. You didn't know what you were dealing with. You had no clue. This has always been down Tank's alley, man. Now, let me just say one thing. you know?
When Jake Paul's scheduled exhibition with Gervonta Davis fell through due to serious legal issues surrounding Davis, Paul and his team quickly searched for a replacement. One of the names mentioned was Francis Ngannou, the former UFC heavyweight champion turned crossover boxer. Known for his incredible size, raw power, and reputation, Ngannou is considered one of the most formidable fighters in striking sports today.
Something unique. It would be something incredible. It's the same reason that I would be intrigued by a Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight, although I would never advise Jake Paul to take a Anthony Joshua fight. I wouldn't advise him to take a Francis Ngannou fight either, because as much as Anthony is far better, which we saw when they actually fought, Joshua slept Francis Ngannou quicker than me after 2 melatonin. I mean, it was quick, fast, in a hurry, completely dominant. But we also saw Francis Ngannou go toe-to-toe with the heavyweight champion of the world at that time. Yes, he was out of shape. We understand that. But Tyson Fury on that night got the shock of his life when Francis Ngannou not only went toe-to-toe, but put him down and danced on him. To this day, I think that fight could have gone Francis's way. Point being, there are levels to this shit. Not just in boxing, but in combat in general. And the size difference Francis would have over Jake would be incredible, but it would have been a great event. And a lot of people would have tuned in. Francis, though, is saying that's not happening.
How can they go from like Gervonta Davis to Francis Ngannou? Like, I mean, Gervonta Davis is a fantastic boxer, but and is a one-shot knockout artist. But come on, like the weight different and everything, it make no sense.
It's a good point. I mean, obviously, Francis is right about the weight difference, but it's a good point in general for what do you do next? Jake has sparred guys like Shakur Stevenson, Ray Ford, Montana Love to try to prepare for Tank Davis. And even if you book this fight on December 12th or December 19th, that's still a completely different fight than you were going into. Completely different matchup, size-wise, skill-wise, the things that you're going to need to even try